All right, good evening, everybody. This is the now annual off-season preview pod, but it's more of a preseason pod, if that makes sense, as we are going to look into the potentials for next season. As I mentioned earlier in chat, which many of you probably missed, we looked at a number of different facets of next season. So that'd be season 2085, and kind of how that's going to go. Playoff sim is going to start here in roughly about an hour. It'll be a live sim with Andy, so please stick around for that. However, in the meantime, and potentially into that time, we'll be looking at each team looking at going into next season, including will they potentially have any comp picks? Obviously, some people have already declared they are comping certain players, so that'll be a little bit of a cheat and a little bit easy, but it'll be on there nevertheless. We will look at potential cap space, look at the max cap based on where their current cap sits, and that also equates to how much cap they're going to have in free agency this year. Free agency could potentially be nice this year. We might not have the big name like we had last year, but we still should have a relatively good free agent class if all goes according to what teams maybe should be doing or maybe could be doing, maybe a little bit of both. So we'll look at that briefly. We'll also look at kind of where each team stands moving into next season. That includes the people that we expect, or at least I expect, for them to release in the free agency and or comp, but also taking into account what people's general tendencies are in free agency, whether they'll add, whether they'll stand pat, whether they'll make a trade or two, kind of all goes into how we're going to look at them moving into next year. So we'll look at their major league squads as far as hitting, pitching, and defense goes, roughly. Also, we'll look at their minor league system. So, kind of the ratings for their minor league system on the same counts, hitting, pitching, and defense, to see where they stand with each team, or for some teams don't stand. And then we'll get into a little bit of fun too with each team's potentially best hitter and best pitcher, and whether they have a hitter or pitcher that's a rookie or will be a rookie next year and or maintains that rookie status moving into next year for some players, for a few players, and whether they have those players will help them at all next year. Some teams have both sides of potential people to help them, and some teams don't. It all depends on each team and their rookies who will be available or should be available, making that jump to the major leagues at the start or midway through next season. And then finally, we will look at an outlook on each team, how their outlook looks for next season. It'll be just kind of on a scale that I've just made up, which is very unscientific, but should give a good look at to what to expect from each team, though I think we all kind of know relatively well what each team is going to do next year. And then just for the hell of it, I am going to go ahead and project a number of things for next year that I have no business projecting. I will project the finish for each division. I will project the MVP, Cy Young, and Rookie of the Year winners for the AL/NL, as well as playoff matchups, playoff winners, and the eventual World Series winner for next year. Again, these things and more I should have no business doing, but I'm going to do them anyway because, well, you're all here to listen. So, as I've not actually looked, has anybody said anything? Unmute your mic and talk. I'm hoping that people are hearing me. Are you all hearing me, or have I been talking for nothing? I'm going to go ahead and assume we are. Okay, so yeah, see, that's what I get for trying to read. I'm going to go back to not reading and go back to my talking. I hate you guys so much. This is why I should have just done it by myself offline, but too late for that now. I've already talked too much. All right, so let's get into it. So Arizona, we're going to do this alphabetically. Last year, I know I did it by division. I did this alphabetically because I created this whole off-season guide, and it's just easier for me to go about it that way. So it's going to be alphabetically. So Peter, tune back in about an hour or so. We'll be to your team hopefully by then, if not a little bit sooner. So Arizona is a team that this year has finished at the top of their division. Again, as probably a surprise to none, they had 106 wins, the most in baseball this year, and they looked very good doing so. Playoffs will be in a little bit, so we'll see how that really shakes out for them in the end. But going into this offseason, they have at least one player I think that will more than likely be comped by them. And they also have a little bit of cap space to play. So they're still a relatively young team with a lot of high-end talent. I'm projecting their cap to be around 150 after re-signings, leaving them about $24 million, 24 to 25 million comfortably for them to be able to play within free agency. So that's not a lot. That's not a big name free agent, but they don't really need a big name free agent. So that's a lot of little pieces they can kind of add to their team to kind of help with that 100-win streak. As far as the team itself goes, obviously their hitting is really where they kind of make the difference compared to some of those other teams and why they won as many games as they do. They just have one of the better lineups you're going to see in the game at the moment. Even with the injury that they had with Russ Phillips toward the end of the year, they're going into the playoffs. They still have a very dangerous lineup with Fingers and Halkerson, Rufford and Miranda all sitting at the top, just absolutely crushing the ball and getting on base a ton. So their offense is something that really scares the crap out of other teams. When we get on the pitching side, they do have Sal Delzell still at the top, 29-year-old lefty. He signed up for a number more years and just looks to be is one of the better pitchers in the file. You add that to a bullpen that pitched relatively well this year and it looks to be relatively intact moving into next year. You can kind of see how they will continue to be a major force moving forward on both the hitting and pitching side. Now, I also went ahead just for the hell of it and kind of averaged out where everybody's hitting grades are, pitching grades and such. Arizona is above everybody on hitting, they're above on pitching, and they're above on defense. So they're above in all three categories. Their pitching being slightly weaker than their hitting, and a little bit closer to other people's averages, not as good as a number of other teams, but still good when you compare it. When you add that to the hitting, it makes for a very dangerous team, and their defense plays quite well. Now, as far as their minor leagues go, their minor leagues are not as stocked as some other teams. They have a couple of pitchers that should be pretty good once they do hit the majors, one of which will be hitting the majors, I would think, to start next season somewhere in their rotation. On the hitting side, they're a little bit weaker. I've got a couple guys down there that are a little bit farther off that should see some playing time, and one guy that will be playing, probably not to start the season, but somewhere probably mid-season whenever measures comes up. He's a power hitting outfielder with a good eye that people are going to have to kind of keep track of and look out for as he goes up there to maybe take one of the spots those guys are in the rotation. Maybe a trade will be in the works from Arizona, cut some of that salary, add to their talent pool, and still not really miss a beat. So it'll be interesting to see how they play that in the offseason, but I don't project them to be overly busy in free agency unless they somehow free up some cap. But I don't think there's any need to. I think they'll keep what they have and be very happy about that. Their best hitter, I think, by far is Miranda. Probably the most complete hitter in the line. Now, this one's hard because Arizona has a number of good hitters, but I think Miranda would be their best hitter, and I should probably check the chat. Oh, good. Nobody's really texting. That's good. So you guys just keep quiet of that and just listen. It'll be good to go. Dalzell obviously being their best pitcher. Again, as mentioned, 29 years old. Still got a number of years left in those tires. Best rookies. Now, are there any rookies on Arizona who are going to be playing next year and are going to help them out a bit? I've kind of already mentioned one of the measures on the offensive side, the center fielder or outfielder. I think he is a guy that is going to probably not start the season up on the big club, but after his jump next year, should see a significant amount of time on the major league squad and should be somebody that really does help them win some games. On the pitching side, Berman's a pitcher that I've liked for a while. I was tempting to draft him a couple of years ago when he was a draftee, and he is a guy that looks kind of ready to roll. I project him to be I would expect him to be in the rotation somewhere next year, probably the back end of that rotation, but pitching very well. So he's a guy that I really am interested to see how he can do. Outlook overall for Arizona, very good. I think they have a very good outlook moving forward. They have a lot of good young players. Their cap situation seems to be in check, so they have the ability to do what they need to do to continue on their winning ways. So I think the outlook in Arizona is very good. Atlanta is next on the board, just based on the alphabet alone. They have another team that I think will have probably one comp selection going into free agency this year. They're going to comp one guy. And again, with any of these teams, it's really hit or miss. Some guys are going to not comp guys I think they should have because I think they're going to resign them and make better for that. Some guys are going to comp guys just because they can. Certain teams have more cap space, and so they're going to comp guys that might not need to be comped, but might be risky enough that somebody's going to take them. And even if not, they have the cap space to suffer it, so they don't really care. So there's certain GMs that are going to do that much more than others, but I expect at least one comp out of Atlanta coming into the season. And Atlanta's a team that just traded for Priestley. They were the third team to do so this past year. And then they paid him an exorbitant amount of money to stick around in Atlanta and really kind of solidify that already vastly superior offense that they have out there. So based on that, with re-signings that I would expect them to make, even with the comps, they're still projected at about $227 million payroll going into next year, which puts them $17 million over their cap. This is something Atlanta does quite frequently and doesn't seem to have a problem doing, so they will probably trade pieces or draft picks moving into next year to make up that cap difference and to continue to put a winning team on the field. I don't think it bothers them that much, and I don't see why that's going to stop now. It does mean, however, they're going to be very picky in free agency if they dabble at all, which they probably will to fill a couple of little holes here and there. But all in all, their team is basically set for the next couple years. Hitting, again, their hitting is phenomenal. You really can't find too many holes in that lineup, which is something that should scare the hell out of people. Nobody in the NL East would admit to that, but they should. That is a very scary lineup, kind of top to bottom. So very many holes. You look at Priestley, this Cecil Nation, and kind of Paul Lucy in the middle of that lineup there with Kevin Donnelly. You got a lineup that is just going to get on base and smack people in a lot. They're going to score a ton of runs. Pitching side, again, I think it's one of the better pitching staffs in the file. Just top to bottom. Their bullpen was amazing. Their starters are amazing. Starters, however, are getting a little bit older. I mean, you're looking at a starting rotation that averages probably in the low 30s for age, which isn't much, but they're getting up there. I mean, Wilson and Williams, they're guys that are not going to last forever. So the window in Atlanta, while wide open at the moment, will be closing soon, and they know that. They know that they've got a few more years to make a really good push at this. Then the rubber's going to meet the road. They're going to kind of decide exactly how to go from there. But hitting, one of the tops in the leagues. I think the only two teams that I have here in the file I'm looking at that have better lineups. Well, better lineups would be New York, Arizona, who I already talked about, and Washington. Those are the only teams I project to have a better lineup than Atlanta, but Atlanta's right there with one of the best. And pitching wise, though, again, as I said, Atlanta has the best pitching staff, I think, in the file. Period, hands down. I think that's why they win as many games as they do, and why they could be World Series favorites tonight. It'll be very interesting to see kind of who comes out of that bracket in the NL. It's going to be a very good matchup, hopefully. Defense, again, Atlanta puts together a pretty good defensive squad. There's really no issues there. And again, for the most part, across the systems, across all the teams, all the defenses are relatively to each other. So not a lot of difference, but they do enough, and they obviously get the job done. As far as the rookie side of things goes, they're better than some. They could be a little bit better than others. I know that doesn't make much sense. They really have nothing on the pitching side. Their minors are bare. There's a couple of random people just hanging out there because, well, somebody needs to be there. But it reminds me a lot of what Kansas City's was about 10 years ago. When you try to look for specs to find it, there are none. Hitting side, they've got a couple of specs. Nothing that stands out as super great. So there's not really a lot that's going to help them coming into this year. There's no pitcher that I see that will be their best rookie going into this year, quote unquote. Velas, the first baseman, I think is a guy that even without a jump, but with his potential next jump, should be a guy that can help them next year, even probably off the bench based on their lineup. But if an injury were to occur, he could step in and help them get through that without too much difficulty. Obviously, their best hitter, I would say, is Priestley. And I know it's a tough one to go because there's a lot of good hitters in that lineup. I think Priestley is a very great bat, and probably their best hitter. And Wilson, I think, is their best pitcher. Outlook for them, very good. Again, their window will be closing more than likely in the next few seasons, but during those seasons, they're going to be World Series favorites most of those years. So again, nothing that I would be concerned about from them. Next team on the list would be Baltimore. Baltimore is a team that don't want to say it's quite rudderless, but needs a little bit more direction than what it has. A lot of good young players coming up in Baltimore, um, and hopefully high heat can come in and kind of get and be a little bit more active with them and kind of get them on that right path. They have an interesting offseason coming up because if I look at it correctly, there's three guys um, that could potentially be comping and potentially be highly comping that would really help them along insofar as they're good players, but they're also good players that people would scoop up in an instant. So it might be smart to comp them, let the young guys play it out, and just kind of see how it goes. Projected cap, if they do go the way that they believe they should, it's gonna be nothing. They're gonna have a $40 million cap, but which leaves them about 58 million in cap space to kind of sign a couple of those guys to make up for some of the production they might lose to those comp guys. But again, it'd be interesting to see. I thought Baltimore should have gone that way last year, made some trades, and kind of just seen the writing on the wall. They did not. I was specifically told by them that they were hoping to play for it last year. Obviously, that did not go well as they lost 97 games. Um, so hopefully this year they do what I think they should have done last year: trade off a couple pieces, comp some guys, and just get ready for that push. Because when you look at it, their lineup is quite good now with those young guys up there, and it should get nothing but better. I mean, once these guys start to mature and really start to play, I think they're going to have a pretty good, pretty scary lineup in the NL East. Quite ready to make that to compete yet with the likes of Montreal and New York, but I think they're a year or two off, and that they're going to be pretty good. And again, even their pitching side, they have some good young pitchers that probably should have been called up midseason, but weren't, again, due to a slight lack of inactivity. I think that if that activity begins to rise in Baltimore, you're going to see some things change in the next year or two. Again, not next season, but next year or two, things are going to change. Best hitter, I think Zach Turner's their best hitter. I mean, even for a young guy, I think he's going to be very dynamic for them, the top of their lineup. Patrio is, I think, their best pitcher. He pitched pretty well this year. He's a guy I know they've been dangled by Baltimore for a couple seasons, but he kept him. Probably a good call. Should continue to put out good numbers from him. Janke, I believe, is the best hitter that they're going to see as a rookie next year. Now, they have a lot of good young first basemans. I think he's the closest to being ready. I think he's the most likely to contribute early on to midseason next year and can help them win a couple games, hopefully a couple more than they won this year. Um, After that, on the pitching side, Santos. Santos was ready this year. I don't know why he wasn't put up in there, but he's ready to go. So I expect to see him to start the year in the rotation. And their outlook, they're improving. I think they're improving very quickly. I think in the next year or two that there's going to be, I'm not going to go as far as say a changing of the guard in the East. I think the Yankees are too good. I think Montreal is too good for that right now. But we'll see. I think Baltimore's going to start to use those big sticks and make some noise very soon here. So make some smart moves this offseason. They can really push that agenda um, and do what they need to do. Boston, on the other hand, Boston's the next team we're going to be looking at. They are also in the AL East. I don't have them comping anybody because I don't think they have anybody worth comping. To be honest, I don't think they have anybody worth much of anything on their team other than some pitchers who obviously they're not going to move with Fitz, Maxwell, Break. Um, I don't think they're going to move any of them, and why should they? They're very young, good, talented pitchers. Um, so their pitching side looks great. I mean, you look at their pitching, and you're like, oh, man, they should probably be winning a bunch of games. And you click over and you look at their hitting, and you're like, oh, no, they shouldn't. And they shouldn't. They're unfortunately just not a team that's going to be doing much right now. Boston's in a very interesting thing. Their projected cap is even lower than Baltimore's, about 34 million, but their cap room is about 113. I mean, their cap's almost 150, where it projects to be. So they have almost 115 million dollars they could spend in free agency this year. Now, if they went out there and spent even 100 and put it all in the hitting, would that make enough of a difference for them to be competitive in the AL East? Probably not. But it would make them more competitive than the, oh, let's see, 73 games they won. So they did win 73 games. That is honestly a bit of a surprise. I thought they lost a lot more than that. Sorry, Fred. That's what I thought. I'm surprised. I think it's the pitching really that's what's kept them in it. So that if they did add some hitting with that massive amount of money that they have just sitting there, they could be okay. But I don't know. I just don't see it. They haven't had I don't understand the direction they've been going. The pitching seems to be ready. You think they'd be adding some young bat. They aren't too far off. That should help turn things around, but we'll see. I don't know. For some reason, I'm just not overly high on the Red Sox at the moment. I mean, when I look at them as far as their hitting, pitching, and defense goes, as it stands, their hitting's below the league average by quite a bit. Their pitching is a little bit is getting above. Again, they have a pretty good rotation and not a terrible bullpen. And their defense is below, so their defense has kind of been hurting them. And that's been something that's been pointed out, I believe, a number of times about their organization. But then again, you look at their okay, that's weird. I should not be doing that. You look at the minors, um, and you like some of what you see, but you're not thrilled by all of it, if that makes sense. I apologize. My one frame there now it's working. Okay. Their hitting is just a little bit below what the average is. Their pitching is a little bit above. Again, this is for their minor league teams. This is for their, rookies and beyond. And then the defense is what it is. But Baltimore's a team. Baltimore, I apologize. Boston is a team, and I have them as a poor outlook. I don't know why. I just don't. The specs that they have, I'm just not too high on. And then again, I could be misseeing something. I could be misremembering something. But I mean, like you look at their pitching side, you look at somebody like Lyle Reed, 995, and think, wow, that's very good. And you look at him and you're like, oh no, it's really not. That's just a weird thing for him to be rated that with what he has. So it'd be interesting to see. Again, on the hitting side, they have some guys I'm not fans of. I'm not a fan of Darren Mapstone. I don't like him. I think he's not going to do much, honestly. And I'm sorry, Fred, I just don't. Gabe Tinker, the guy they just picked up, I mean, he's probably their best spec on that side. Pat Curry's not bad either. Jose Vion is a solid-looking bat, but he's already 24. It'll really depend on this next season's jump, kind of where he goes. But I'm not seeing enough that really excites me about the potential in Boston. I mean, their best hitter right now is Jim Painter, and that says it all. Right now, he's a guy that's going to hit 210 and a number of home runs, but nothing fancy. Pitching's fantastic. Wallace is a great pitcher. I think he's their best pitcher. And they have a couple of rookies that will come up this year that should help them. If you I mentioned, he should come up this year, probably be playing, I'd hope, opening day. And same with Lyle Reed. Lyle Reed's a guy that I don't like. I think he's grossly overrated, and I don't think he's that good. But he's their best rookie pitcher, and he probably should have a shot in the back end of the rotation to start next year, just to see if he can indeed not be terrible. So again, I have it as a poor outlook in Boston, but poor might be unfair. I think middling look for them. I don't know. We'll see what happens with the Red Sox. Moving on to the Cubs. Cubs don't have anybody that I think they're going to comp anybody. And again, that is just absolutely. Miranda is the MVP. Refford is the best hitter. Okay, so about stuff. That's fine. I should be on Fred's shit list, Jermaine. That is absolutely true. But sorry, Fred. Hopefully you're not listening. You are listening, son of a bitch. Oh well. Well, it is what it is. So the Cubs. Cubs have a good team. They do. It's odd for them to finish kind of where they finished this year. To be honest, they finished in third at 86 and 76. They finished it looks like 3 games out of the playoffs behind Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh snuck in ahead of them. Nothing against Pittsburgh. We'll get to Pittsburgh in a little while, but the Cubs surprisingly did not do overly well. I don't think they're going to be okay, I almost spilled my water. I don't think they'll be comping anybody this year. And I'm projecting their cap to be about 112 going into the offseason, which means they have about $25 million in space. So not a lot, but enough to make a couple of moves. Hitting, again, they're up there with Atlanta, one of the best lineups, I think. Not as good as Atlanta, not as good as Arizona or New York, but as good as Atlanta, I believe their lineup is. And I think that's really their strong suit, would be their lineup with Nace and Torbala, Black, Warner, Sandoval. Aldalco looks to be up there and playing quite well here in his kind of second full-time season. So, things are looking up on the hitting side. Like, they have a good lineup. It's really when you then flip over to their pitching where they kind of fall apart a little bit. Their pitching has been not great, not great. They have the two kind of big pitchers at the top of Tanoki and Cluett, and after that, nothing. I mean, they really stalled. If they had added another good pitcher or even two okay pitchers, um, they probably wouldn't be in this part of the conversation. They'd probably be in the playoffs. They might have edged out Pittsburgh, um, but their bullpen was just for the most part trash. And after those two top pitchers, they really didn't have anybody that screams, I'm on a winner. It's unfortunate, but that's kind of what happened to Chicago this year was just a lack of pitching, and it shows that their pitching falls below the league average. Um, and their MLB squad, I think that was a big part of what happened there. So they'll need to find a way to address that. They might need to get creative and trade a star that's making too much money in an attempt to bring in a pitcher or two that's going to be better suited for them. Again, with their cap space, they can be selective in free agency. And again, I think that they're going to be a decent free agent pitching market this year. Um, if my inclinations and projections are correct. So that should be good for them, particularly to really help out and kind of make that playoff push moving into next year. Because when you flip over and you look at their minor league system, not a lot there. There's just not a lot there. There's one or two guys on the pitching side that look like they may be a few years close. Nothing that's going to be able to help them to start next year, probably even midway through next year. Hitting side, they've got a couple of guys that should be ready. I think Brad White is a catcher, 25 years old. Again, you look at him, his vitals aren't great. Nothing's screaming out superstar or even necessarily maybe everyday player. But I think out of everybody, he is the best rookie hitter they have. Is White. They don't really get no pitchers. They're going to help them next year. I think Nace is their best hitter. I think Cluett's their best pitcher. I think their outlook remains. Actually, I have their outlook is declining. I think their outlook is declining. I think that they need to do something about that pitching. Otherwise, they'll just kind of waste that good talent they have on the offensive side. Again, that's something they could do, but without a lot of cap space, it'll be interesting to see what they can do. So I'm sure it could be a decline uh, in Chicago, and I find that it's hard to think of that because they have such a young kind of offensive side of things. But unless they can address that pitching, I think that is the way that it's going to go. So it's very, very. Gilly says I'm coming across soft. Is that true for everybody else? I'm also trying to not talk too loud so I don't wake up my kids or my wife, so that could be part of it. And now everybody's talking, but too slowly. I can hear it. Good enough. All right. So that is where we stand, I believe, with Chicago. Now, going across the other end of the winning city, we can go to the White Sox. White Sox, again, I don't have anybody that they think will comp. I don't think they have anybody worth comping. If anybody that's hitting free agency, their cap projection sits at about 60 million, but their cap max currently sitting at about 87. So they have about the same amount as Chicago, about 27 million. The other Chicago, apologize, 27 million to spend this off season. But do they need to? Yeah, it wouldn't help, wouldn't hurt. But you look at their offensive side, they got a good offense. They've got a good young offense. They've got guys that should be coming up probably, if not the start next year, midway through, at the very latest the year after. They have a very deep minors on the hitting side. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where they go from here. As it stands now, their hitting is kind of that next tier down. So we're going to talk about the top tier, or at least I've alluded to the top tier of kind of this New York, Washington, Arizona kind of top tier. And that's kind of that next team down, the Cubs, Atlanta, etc. And then kind of in that tier, just below that tier, you see the White Sox. They're right there. And I think the White Sox, and we'll get to this later, I think they're going to surprise a number of people. I think their hitting is going to be very, very good. And I think if you look at their pitching too, their pitching this year, they're pitching again a bunch of young guys that one was a rookie this year, fourth season rookie, second season. So you're looking at a very young pitching staff. Didn't pitch too poorly. I mean, didn't pitch great. Don't get me wrong. Did not pitch too poorly either. And they have a very strong closer. I think they have one of the bullpens that they put together over there in Chicago. I think that young rotation is going to get a little bit better this offseason. At least they're going to experience a little bit more. I don't necessarily get any better. But the little bit of cap they have, they add a pitcher. I think it's a team you should kind of watch out for next year, honestly, with the White Sox. Again, they're hitting very good. Pitching, if you look at the average for the league, they're above the average. They're above the average as is. So as they move into next year, and those guys hopefully maybe get a little jump, get a little bit better. Their pitching should be even a little bit better, and their defense is on par with everybody. So they're a team I'd watch in a division that I'll talk about more in a little bit. But they're a team I would definitely keep an eye on because, again, you look at their rookies, you look at their minors. I think their minors are relatively deep on the hitting side, pitching side, not as deep, but the hitting side for sure. I think there's a number of once they come up and start making some noise again, they'll be a scary team. As it sits, though, the best hitter, Perkins, I believe Sean Perkins is their best hitter. Alan Longer, another guy that, in retrospect, maybe I should have drafted. Looks to be their best pitcher out there. And again, pitching staff's not top notch, but it's getting the job done with the hitters that they have. It's exactly what they need as far as pitching goes. I think their best rookie hitter, I think Heiberger should be up next year and doing some damage on the major league level. Rookies, no, and they don't really have any rookie pitchers. They're going to help them next year. Outlook, good. I think their outlook is good for next year. I think they're going to, again, surprise a couple of folk. Cincinnati, next on the list. I think there's one comp guy that might come out of Cincinnati. And again, as I said earlier, this is all conjecture. People might specifically not or do the opposite of what I say just because. I don't think anybody's that petty, but you never know. Cincinnati, I think there's one guy that they're going to comp coming out of Cincinnati. Cap space, they're another team that's over. I mean, I'm projecting their cap at about 101 next year, and their max cap currently sits about 92. I think it'd probably be a little bit higher than that. So they're about even out to, $5 to $10 million over their cap already. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. If I remember correctly, they have a fair amount of cash kind of on hand. I could be wrong about that, but they got $110 million on hand. Yeah, so I don't think they're worried about money much in Cincinnati at all. And that's good because, again, if we looked at Chicago's hitting, Cincinnati's hitting is just as good, if not a little bit better. Cincinnati has a very good lineup, top to bottom. Again, nobody that screams out maybe the same way as like the Atlanta lineup or the Arizona lineup does, but they're very good, well put together team, very well put together lineup, kind of all play off each other just right. Their defense is quite good, a little bit of a hole at third base, but that is what it is. I think they'll fix that this offseason somehow and kind of turn that around. Of course, it is possible that things are moving around. No, I'm sticking to that. Pitching, I like their pitching. I like their pitching quite a bit. I think that they have a lot of nice young pitchers. I mean, you look at the average age of the rotation is 26. I mean, that's not something that you're going to sneeze at. Yeah, the last couple pitchers maybe aren't the best ones out there, but Troy did have a good year. And there was also guys that they had that maybe not quite didn't cut it this year when they look at Carreras, then finishing the year outside of the rotation. So I like the rotation. I like their bullpen. I think they have a solid bullpen. Not great, but solid. So I like Cincinnati top to bottom. I think they're a well put together team. Good offense, pretty good pitching, solid defense. Prospect wise, again, this is another one of those teams that unfortunately the coverage look a tad bare. I mean, they have one guy on the offense that I think is very talented, potentially, that should be coming up soon in Justin Tunicliffe. However you want to say it. I think he's a guy that if anybody, he's next year to potentially be able to help them. Probably not to start, but maybe about mid-season if he should be up there, kind of helping down the stretch. Pitching side, nobody. They have got Kelly Dixon, who I do like, but I don't think he will be ready. anytime soon. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be a couple of years, especially since apparently he has changed to a reliever. So trying to turn a make a closer out of him, it's a bold choice. Um, might work, might not. I guess we'll kind of see on that. But he's their best prospect, and he's a number of years off on the pitching side. So I'm not going to really, again, hold my breath there. But Alex Cincinnati, very good. They won their division this year, if I'm not mistaken, with 93 wins. That's going to continue. Again, they have a young pitching staff, they have a young hitting core, plenty of cash. So I think somehow their payroll's off. No, my payroll's on. I did it right. I'm talking to myself now instead of you guys. That's the way it works sometimes. Cincinnati, I think, is in a very good position um, to make noise in that division. Now, check the chat. Eggplant from Gilly. Thanks, Gilly. All right, so Cleveland, on to the Indians, the Matty-led Indians. I think he's, when I talk about GMs that kind of have the cap space availability and are more likely to gamble on comping some players that other GMs might be wary to. That's Cleveland right there. That's Matty. Matty has the cap room and the ability to comp guys other teams might be not willing to. And again, not saying that they're bad or unworthy comp players. I'm just saying Matty has the ability to and has shown the ability to and the willingness to take a little bit more of a gamble than some other GMs when it comes to comp selection. So I think we're going to see at least one comp out of them. Initially, I had them at 0, but I think we'll see at least one. And again, we might see 3. Who knows? With the kind of cap space that he has, I mean, I'm projecting his cap at about 54 going into the offseason. And his cap that's about half what he actually has. He'll have over 50 million to spend. Will he? I don't think so. I think he'll dabble a little bit here and there, but he's just not. Their team is not quite ready yet. They're still a few years off from being competitive, but I can see him getting. If there's a young player out there, I can see him bidding up, taking him just to have him for when they are ready. But we'll see. Hitting wise, about mid range. As it stands, their hitting is not ideal. Actually, it's a little bit under mid range, about a little bit under the average. Pitching is, ooh, their pitching is not good. Their pitching is not good. But again, they're in a rebuild. They still did win 74 games. Again, not necessarily knocking anybody here, but their pitching is just where it needs to be. Um, and will it get better? Yeah, it will. They have a number of very good pitching prospects that are either a year or 2 or more, in some cases, off. Things are going to change in Cleveland pretty quick. Right now, hitting's pretty solid. Pitching is terrible. Defense is pretty good. On the rookie side of things, a lot of good hitters, a lot of good pitchers coming up in the near future that I think is going to turn Cleveland around relatively quick. I mean, you look at when they have hitters like Thurtle and Alanson um, and players of that ilk. I think that once they start getting ready, Otto Flaxman, a guy that somebody probably commented that I should have drafted, and I definitely should have. I had him projected to me that year, and I didn't take him. Well, I'm stupid. So I think that Cleveland is a team that is going to be good um, in a couple of years. I mean, their best hitter right now is probably Dressel. Their best pitcher is another guy that was traded a few times last year in Linnell. I think he's a solid pitcher, especially for a rebuilder like them. A good pitcher for them. Best rookie looking into next year. Now this is a little bit tough because they have a lot more. They have a lot better rookies on the offensive side, but I think Elaine. I'm gonna go with Elaine. Their 793 overall hitter. I think he's the guy that they could probably plug and play in that outfield right away and just kind of letting him work through it. Might not do anything, but I think that's the best option for them potentially moving into next year. Obviously, I wouldn't tell any GM what to do, especially with Matty, who'll quickly defend anything that I said that was wrong. But and I think Dwyer might be ready for them next year, and he's going to be a very good young pitcher. So I think he should be ready, if not the start of the year, at some point next year. Their outlook, they're middling. I mean, they're going to continue to win right about what they are until some of these guys get up into the majors and really start making a difference. So they're a team that's going to be right around that mid 70s wins range, at least next year, if not the next 2 years. And then they're going to really start to take off. So Cleveland's a team in a couple of years I would really watch. All right, moving on to Colorado. Still double leg plan. All right, we're good. Moving on to Colorado. Colorado is a team that has a little bit of cap space. little bit of cap space. I don't think they're going to comp anybody this offseason. I think their caps could be around 95 going into the offseason, which gives them about 18 to play with. So none of those big contracts like they pegged out a couple of years ago. They did not keep Priestley and re-sign him, so that also helps save their cap space a little bit. Had they done that, I think that they'd be again looking to be over the cap moving into next year. Something like again, Colorado's one of those teams that doesn't really worry about too much, but they do keep it in mind. So they're hitting again tends to be toward the upper tiers as far as their hitting goes. Again, I'm below that Chicago line. If we've been kind of following that mindset of mine, which I know is probably a little bit crazy, but if we've been following that, they're kind of that next stage down from that level. So kind of that above average level, but not way above average level. I mean, you look at their hitters, and nothing really jumps out, but they got a couple good hitters. Dan Harris, Glenn Tolme, Martin Milford. I mean, all these guys hit 23 plus home runs, hit 280 or better. Mitch Tennant, center fielder, top of the lineup, hit pretty well this year. I mean, they've got nobody that nobody that's a superstar. They don't have any superstar hitters, but they've got a lot of good, solid hitters. You don't mind to see that in a team, which is a nice core of solid, not flashy, not over the top hitters. Yeah, it's not a New York lineup. Yeah, it's not a Arizona or Washington lineup where you're just like, oh, I don't want to pitch to any of these guys. You don't mind pitching any of these guys, but they're still going to knock you around. Part of that might be the ballpark. Part of that might be it's just a good put together team. I tend to lean toward the good put. I think they've done a good job of kind of putting together this interesting little team out there that, again, only won 80 games this year. Um, only won 80 games this year, but still played well enough. Pitching's where it hurts them again. They've got a couple guys that are good, but none of them pitched great. Again, ballpark, not, who knows. But it'll be interesting to see. They did trade two of their better young pitching prospects to get Priestley before they traded him along later in the season. So it'll be interesting to see. But they have some guys that, when they start to mature, might be pretty good. I mean, you look at their minors. Minors are a bit bare. Hitting's okay. They've got a couple hitters that should be pretty good. One of which I think is going to be very good and should be playing next year. And then a couple past that I know they're very excited about. And guys like Joe Sorley and Mike Termond and Ray Berotans. I massacred that one, so I apologize, Cad, but I know what I mean. There's also that bad man down there. And on the hitting side, they got a little ways off, but should be up there relatively soon to play. I think the one guy that will be up there to start the year or soon after is that Joel Miller, who's the main piece they got back from Atlanta for Priestley. And I think he's going to be their best rookie hitter next year. I don't think they have any rookie pitchers. Unfortunately, they're going to step up for them. So that will continue to be an issue that might plague them next year. I think Tolme is currently their best hitter. And I think Sims is honestly probably their best pitcher right now. So we'll see how that goes moving into next year. If they're able to do. Is that what I sound like? I believe this is what I sound like. Again, I'm talking a little bit lower than usual potentially, just so that I don't keep my kids up or keep my wife up or wake up my kids. So I'm pretty sure this is what I sound like, but I don't know. I don't think I'm jostling my cords at all, so I should be fine. All right, well, I'll type and I'll check back in a minute. All right, moving on to Detroit, the Motor City. So Detroit won the AL Central this year. AL Central this year, probably not a surprise to GB. Potentially a surprise to many other people who did not expect them to win 94 division, but here we sit. They did. Your wife walked by and moaned. That's just creepy. All right, so skip Detroit. Heck, I wish I could, but that would be rude. So comp. No, I don't think they're going to comp anybody this year. I think they're going to project it about 114 million in cap after all their resigns are in, leaving about 51 to play with. That much money for Detroit to play with means that they're going to sign somebody. As we well know, Detroit kind of is freewheeling with their spending in the offseason. They tend to bid early and heavy on the players that they really want. So if you wake up tomorrow morning, well, I'm sorry, not tomorrow morning, if you wake up Friday morning, and see somebody that already has a 3-year, $18 million per bid on him. Detroit wants him. Just let him have him. Fuck it, let him have him. Hitting below league average. Honestly, they were about mid. They were below league average for this year. But they obviously have one of the best hitters that the Files ever seen. They have Jeff Hainsworth, the born-bred tiger that will never leave. So they have him. They have Brian Wolfhurst also put together a good year, and Mario Alderete as well. So again, outside of those main two, not a huge lineup. I mean, you got a bunch of guys that are not great, but let's see here. Let me make sure that he didn't store too many guys down in the minors because I don't have his playoff roster. There's a couple guys down there, but nobody major. Lineup looks to be pretty much the same. So, okay lineup, not great. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with that money. I'm guessing he adds his usually there's plenty of offense available in free agency. So I think that is the direction that he is more than likely going to go. I mean, he also seems to bench a number of guys that were starting just to make it confusing. All right, still, that is what it is. Pitching, he was the first person to say that he did not like his pitching this year. And you look at it and you're not surprised why. His pitching did not do phenomenally well. But it did well enough to win him 94 games, so I don't know why he's complaining. He's one of the best closers in the game. He has a solid bullpen. And a decent young rotation. I mean, again, his rotation is quite young. I mean, you're looking at guys that are 24, 27, 23, 22. He didn't really start much. GB's doing a thing where he hides guys in the minors. 24, again, young rotation. They should age and potentially get a little bit better. So we'll see kind of where that goes in Detroit. Now, as far as his minors go, on the pitching side first, he's got a couple of guys that are pretty good pitchers. I mean, he's got Jake Truesdale as a guy that I'd watch out for in maybe next year, maybe the year after. We'll see kind of how GB wants to play it, but he's got a number of, again, of course, he traded up to get Crowfoot last year, which I think was a good call. I think that's going to pan out well for him in the end. On the offensive side, you got Nat Thomas, got Russ Soley, kind of his maybe his two best prospects down there. But we'll see. I mean, his minors about on par with the league. Nothing great, nothing terrible. I think his best hitter, obviously, is Hainsworth. I mean, Hainsworth be the best hitter in any team. So I'm not gonna say he's the best in the league, but I wouldn't say he's not the best in the league, if that makes sense. Let's see how many. Nope, nothing about that. That's good. So pitching, Perez. I think Perez is a best hitter. I don't think his rookie hitter is going to come up next year. I don't see it. I could be wrong. There could be a jump in there that I don't see. But I don't think he has anybody that helps him out too much down the stretch next year. And I'm going to go on a limb and say it's not going to be Truesdale, but Frank Papp is going to be his best rookie pitcher next year. Guy that's going to do him the most good going into next year. His outlook's good. I don't think he's got the same outlook as Arizona does or as New York will have here in a little bit. But I think he has a very good outlook. I think that the GB retirement home days are kind of over, and the youth movement somewhat has begun in Detroit. I think that's going to do very well for him as time progresses. Florida, the team that Pete loves to hit me about. Here's why. I thought Florida was going to do much better this year than they did. I might have been the only one. That's fine. That's on me. But I think Florida was a bit of a surprise for me as far as they did not do as well as I projected that they would. I think that's going to change next year, potentially. We'll see. I know Pete's going to immediately hear this and yell at me, so we'll see how that goes. But I think that changes going into next year. I don't think they're going to comp anybody. Could be wrong. I just don't see it. Cap, 81. Projecting about to be 81 after re-signings, which leaves them about $40 billion in cap space to play with. So Hokie's not a guy that necessarily dives into free agency. He likes to more build and trade from within. So we'll see what happens there. Hitting wise, he's above league average in hitting. I think he's got a good lineup, and I think he's got some guys that probably will be coming up next year to make that lineup even a little bit better than it is now. And again, I think that lineup was pretty solid this year. I mean, obviously not solid enough to do better than 500, which where he ended up. But I think he's got some bats in there that'll play well, and some guys coming up that could do some damage. But we'll see. Again, I think some of the bats he has down there are still a year or two away, but there might be one or two, and we'll get to their second. That should help him next year. So hitting pretty good, pitching again. That is the part that I don't understand. I thought his pitching would be better than it was. Maybe I'm just wrong, but I thought that his pitching could be better than it was. But I still think he's got a very strong rotation going into next year, and I think his bullpen's going to be pretty solid. So I would not be surprised going into next year if the lead plays what I projected him to play this year, for those who are aware of that. Again, prospect-wise, he's got a lot of good hitting prospects. He's got a lot of very good pitching prospects. It'll be interesting to see moving forward how he makes room for all of them. Again, because he has so many pitchers, he'll more than likely deal at least one season, if not more. Hitters, same thing, got a ton of hitting prospects I think many teams would like, and maybe not. It also seems that a lot of the times that Hokie and I like similar players as far as drafting wise that most of the teams just despise. Maybe not despise, but don't like as much as we do. And more often than not, yeah, no, I'm not going to go there. All right, so we'll see. Best hitter right now, I think Bowering is his best hitter. I think Henning is his best pitcher. Moving into next year, I think the K's are going to have it for him. I think Kerr has the potential to be a very good rookie hitter for him, and I think Key has a very good potential to be a very good rookie pitcher for him. I've not lost too much sleep over losing Key, but I have. I think Key is going to be a essential pitcher for him moving forward. But we'll see. I think the outlook of Florida is good. Not very good, but good. I think it's a good outlook of Florida. Steadily, and pretty soon that people are going to finally listen to me when I say Florida's going to be good this year. Because, honestly, hopefully they will. Houston, the team in my division that makes me look like a bitch. If you need me to interview about the management, okay, G-Money, maybe later. Houston, we have a problem. They're just good. That's the problem, unfortunately. 101 games this year. 101 games this year. I think Mass was saying, wow, they won 101 games. And I wanted to, do you see who's in their division? I mean, Seattle finished second. That should tell you everything you need to know about the division. They won 101 games. So, fuck, it is what it is. Based on conversations had earlier, I've changed my projections a little bit. I think there's two guys that Houston comps. One, I didn't think they would, but I could see why they're going to do it. So I think that makes sense. I think there's two guys are going to comp, and they're still going to project their cap to be about 110. Even after that, well, I'm going to need to change it a little bit because of the comp guy. So let's call it 100. Project their cap to be about 100, which gives them about 100 in cap space. So that's right. Houston is going to the offseason with roughly $100 million in cap space to spend. How is that going to play out? We'll see. Personally, as a fellow GM in that division, I hope they met it and signed some big name free agent for a lot of money and then have the team at all. I don't think that's going to happen. I think TT is too smart for that. But personally, I pray that that's what happens because I'm a terrible person. Hitting, they're right up there, kind of that third tier. If you're following my tier system again, as far as hitting goes, their hitting is quite good. Again, some of these guys they are planning on comping and letting walk in a free agent. So it'll be interesting to see how they account for that. Whether it's somebody from within, whether they have to trade for somebody, whether they sign somebody else in free agency. It'll be interesting to see. And then on the hitting side, there's nobody that's ready. There's really nobody that says, "Here I am, I'm ready. Please use me and comp your guys." So I think that is going to be a problem in Houston, but not a huge problem because I mean their best hitter right now is Lopez, and he's young and very talented. They have another under, Damien Vasquez got a good jump this year. Looks like he'll be a talented hitter as well. So I don't think they're going to go wanting in Houston next year. I mean, like I said, they're hitting good. They're pitching. On the other hand, they got one of the better pitchers in the file. They do. His name is Javi Ramirez. He's 24 years old. They got him from the division right of Texas, and he's good. He's good. Trottier, pretty good. Oren, I'll be interested to see next year in kind of a full season how he plays out. Norway and McAllison played very well this year as well. They don't rate very high, but it's a good rotation, top to bottom. Bullpen, you know, we'll see. Bullpen's solid. Again, he's another one of those guys that put pieces um, into the minors, kind of stashed them down there to protect them. That last sim, since he had the league, the division more than wrapped up. Top to bottom, very good team. Um, Potentially the favorite out of the AL for a sim that could potentially be going on now as I speak. I haven't looked. I will top over and look. And Andy's not on, so I'm going to go ahead and guess that he has not started the thing. So, yes, but he could be the favorite out of the AL. Houston, that is. Um, yeah, I'm trying not to do the self-loading, heck, but it is. Houston might be the favorite out of the AL going into that. We shall see. Prospect-wise, again, moving on to that side of the ball, obviously their major league squad is more than set. Prospect-wise, do they have anybody? Again, on the hitting side, no. I don't see anybody come up and help them next year. Now, I'm not saying there's not anybody there. There's just not a lot there. There's a couple guys further down that are going to help them at some point in the future, but not anytime in the near future. Pitching-wise, really the same thing. The only thing is here is I'm going to give them a little bit of a cheat. Not really, because he didn't spend enough time in the majors, but Oren. I think Oren's going to be their best rookie pitcher next year. I think he slots in right there, number 3 spot going into next year. And as long as he holds that rookie status, should have a very good year. Regardless of his status, he's going to have a very good year, I think, next year. Outlook in Houston, very good. That's as much as because of the division that he plays in and the fact that he has a very well-built young team and a shit ton of cap space. Houston is looking like they will not actually have a problem. Unlike our next favorite guest, Kansas City. Now, I'll throw this out to G Money now since he's already talking about it. Since there is the potential that we're going to have another GM switch this year, so Kansas City might be getting a new GM, but we shall see. Probably, I guess, the next day or two. We'll see how that plays out. But as it stands now, I don't think they're going to comp anybody, and I think they're going to be projected to be about a 120 cap next year, which is good for them because they're usually well over their cap. But I think at 120, they're going to have about 12 million cap space. That's potential. Potentially. We'll see how things change, obviously, but I think that they're going to have a little bit in cap space going into this offseason, which doesn't mean much because they generally go way over their cap space and somehow still make it on the end. I don't know how they do it. I should probably pay attention, so if one day I have to emulate it, I can, but we'll see. On the hitting side, I think that I hit the wrong button. There we go. Just up there with Houston. I think they have one of the better lineups, that third tier with the lineups. Very good lineup. It'll be interesting to see how that goes this offseason. I know there was some talk there might be some rebuild in Kansas City, and I think it's definitely time for a team that finished under 500. I think it's time for them to kind of pull the plug and do either a full-scale rebuild or at least a retool, which I know a lot of teams prefers the retool instead of the full rebuild. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. They definitely have some talent that if put on the open market should net a very nice return for them. So it'll be interesting. But if not, they still have a good team. They still have good hitters there. So I think they could play well on that side. Pitching-wise is a little rough. It's been a little rough for a while. Stayed a little rough this year. I mean, if you look at the rotation, you look how they did. Obviously, it doesn't look rough. It looks good. They have 4 guys in the threes in their ERA, but they're all, if I remember correctly, for the most part, older gentlemen. Let's see here, 33, 36, 26, 29. So too old, too not as old. But I just don't see it. I don't think they're pitching as good as they think. The defense is solid. They have a couple of guys, pitching-wise, too, in the minors that should be coming up next year, maybe in Feuerstein and McMoney's. I believe both drafted the same year. Could be seen playing time next year, which could solidify the youth in that rotation. But I don't know if it's enough for them to keep kind of going for it year in, year out. I think it might be time for them to pump the brakes a little bit and see if they can't do again, in their sense, maybe a quicker retool. Prospects on the hitting side, again, they got a couple guys. Nothing fantastic that I see that's going to be the kind of difference. I think they'd be better off kind of rebuilding. So this year, at least attempting to. Best hitter, I think right now, Smith. Best pitcher, I'm going to go Hinton. Best rookie hitter, again, it's hard, not their best prospect, but I think Vincent is the guy that can help them out the most next year, especially right out the gate. I'm going to go best rookie pitcher is Feuerstein, Das Feuerstein. I think is going to be their best rookie pitcher. He should make the rotation out of camp next year. I'm thinking. Outlook for them, declining. I think it's declining outlook in Kansas City. I think a GM switch would be good potentially for them. Not that Mike's a bad GM by any stretch of the imagination, but I think a new GM coming in there and just finally doing what Mike has a hard time doing and just kind of blowing it up a bit um, would be a good thing for Kansas City. Again, these are all just my opinions and nothing more. Looks like Andy has joined us in the booth, but he'll be starting the sim soon. So good luck to all playoff teams. Look like Andy is in the house and ready to get going. And as he's getting going, I'm going to get back to my own division with LA. The Angels are next on the block. Angels finished somehow not in second place. They finished in tied for third place, technically fourth due to the ever so fun alphabetical game. But they finished at 79 wins this year. So it was interesting for them. I don't think they're going to comp anybody going into this offseason. I just don't see it. They're another team that's going to have a fair amount of cap space. I'm projecting about 61 million cap right now, which means they're going to have about the same, about 61, 62 million to spend. Dan is another guy who's always proven that he will go out and spend free agency, especially to augment his team. Hitting, I have for his hitting right now is below average. I have it below the league average by quite a bit, honestly. That's no offense to him. I mean, just to have him as one of the 4 or 5 worst lineups kind of out there. And again, that's not saying he's a bad lineup. You look at his lineup; he has a pretty solid lineup. I mean, Lance Caulfield had a pretty good year. Mike Carwile was a fantastic pickup for him. Played very, very well. As long as that can continue, I mean, I think they'll have a solid guy there. Ryan Howell is a guy that's interesting. He hit almost 30 home runs and 275 this year. But it doesn't look like what he was hoped to be. He looks like he's been taking a couple hits. Now, that doesn't mean anything. He could very well come into next year, get a big jump, and become a fearsome hitter. But it'll be kind of interesting to see how he, of all the players on that team, progresses moving into next year. Because, again, the hitting is something that's not great right now, but definitely has some room for improvement depending on how some of these guys progress. Pitching-wise, excuse me, and I'm running out of water too. It's unfortunate. A couple of young pitchers that are interesting out in LA, and Lasanti and Logsdom. 2 guys that's I'm not huge fans of either at the moment. Um, they both have the ability to be starting right now, and they did. Obviously, they both pitched over 200 innings this year. Maybe good to get their feet wet. I hope that it was not too early on them. I hope this dabbling that they've been doing with major league pitching um, has not turned them for the worst. Now, obviously, a guy like Lasante's 22, who's already been pitching for 5 years almost, not full time, obviously, 2.5 full time years, but still, um, I hope him coming up as early as he didn't hurt his development at all. Same with Logson. Logson pitched 18 games last year, better than the 34 he pitched this year. It seems like his home runs really jumped this year compared to the innings pitched, not really as much. But his walks did. His walks definitely increased. He walked 101 batters compared to 132 he struck out. Ooh, that's tough. That's just tough. I mean, his whip is it's fucking horrible. So we'll see. 24 still got a little bit of room left to grow. Might not be as bad as I fear. Um, it'll be interesting to see kind of what LA does this offseason. A couple little tinkering moves. I mean, I still think that they are not a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. Honestly, I have them in the middling out. I'm not sure how well it performs because, again, I'm not too high on their minor league system. Again, on the pitching side, I don't see anybody. I just don't like anybody on their pitching side in their minors. And their hitting side is a little bit better. I think they have one guy there that's going to help them quite a bit next year. Might be the only guy that helps them at all, honestly, on their hitting side. That is Seth Blakely. I think Seth Blakely is going to be kind of their best rookie going into next year. I don't see anybody in the pitching side helping them out. Best hitter right now, obviously, is Caulfield. I think is their best hitter by far. And best pitcher, this is the only team that I'm going this way on. Their best pitcher, I believe, is Wilkins, who is their closer. Now, most other teams, I every other team, honestly. All of the 29 teams I picked a starter. This is the only team I picked a relief pitcher as their best pitcher, and I think he is. I think Wilkins is their best pitcher. Um, it'll be interesting to see kind of how LA progresses. Um, coming out of this kind of post World Series rebuild that they've been on. So we'll see how that goes. It'll be interesting to see moving into next year. Moving on to the next LA, this would be the Dodgers. The Dodgers are a team that I think will comp at least two guys. I think I see two easy comps out of them, and I'm not really sure which direction we're going with the Dodgers. I think this is a team that there was talk about them for a while rebuilding, and there was talk about now fuck it, let's go for it. They won 78 games. We'll see. I think it'll be interesting to see which way they go. I think if they wanted to, based on the way that their team looks, they could kind of keep going for it. But at the same time, they could also retool. Again, there's that phrase again. They could retool and really make it too, or tear down and rebuild. I don't think a tear down and rebuild is necessarily in order. I think a retool might make the most sense for them. But again, they might go for it. I'm projecting their cap space at about 78 million, which means they have about 55 million to spend. LA's another team that, when they feel the need to, will go out and spend in free agency because they have the ability to. Um, so I think if they decided to do that, they can add to the team, but will it make them better than any of the teams in their division? I think that's the problem. I think their division too strong right now. So a retool and kind of biding their time might suit their purpose better. So we'll see what happens. Hitting wise, I think their hitting is phenomenal. I mean, again, it's that third tier type hitting. There's some very good hitters out there in LA at the moment. You're looking at Toby Davis, Leon Morin, two of the guys out there that are just very good hitters. Pitching wise, again, I think their pitching is pretty good too. Rotation, very solid this year. Again, nobody's super flashy, a couple of older gentlemen, but good, very good pitching. And I think their bullpen is really what steps them over now. That bullpen pitched relatively poorly, some of them down the stretch, which is a surprise. I think their bullpen was one of their bigger strengths. It'll be interesting to see how this moves, what happens moving forward. They have some young pitchers that are ready to just get out of that long relief role, not put at the starter role. I think some of their starters might be some of the freedoms that we see on the market. We'll see. I'll be interested to see. They've also dangled some of those relief pitchers for a while, so it can't be one of those years. LA trades off a couple guys, gets some specs, gets some picks, does a quick retool, and is ready to go maybe the year after that. So it'll be very interesting to see, because again, as far as the prospects goes, got some guys on the hitting side that look pretty good. Some of them look very good. We'll see. Pitching wise, again, they got some young pitchers. Not a lot in the minors, but a couple that are good in the minors. So it'll be interesting to see which direction they take. I think the best hitter right now is Marin. I think the best pitcher right now is Carney. I think the best rookie hitter now, this is the rookie I think is going to help them the most next year. Probably going to be Hallworth is the guy. And again, I don't see any rookie pitchers out there. And the guys pitching that are young enough, still retain their rookie status, they're going to be much of a help, if any help for them next year. I think that's just something that's not going to happen. So again, for their outlook, improving. I think their outlook's improving. I think they're going to get a little bit better. But again, at the same time, I think a retool might be what best suits them going into this year. Milwaukee. Milwaukee projects to have about $78 million spent going into this offseason, leaving them with about $42 million in cap space. So moving on to the Brewers, it'll be interesting to see how the Brewers do. Now, the Brewers lost 95 games this year. They only won 67. So they're going to get one of those top-end picks. And it's interesting because they have quite a good lineup and quite a good rotation. So it'll be very curious to see what they do with that cap space this year. I'm guessing they're going to spend it, and probably relatively, and if they can, relatively wisely. They're hitting fourth tierish. I mean, not up there, but fourth tier. I mean, they're about league average for hitting. But again, they have some young guys that are just kind of getting their feet wet this year. That played very well, and they also made an interesting trade there toward the end to get Theo Kibler out of New York and bring him to Milwaukee. So I think the goal in Milwaukee is to push for the playoffs next year. Whether they get there or not, we'll see. I think a lot of that's going to rely on their pitching. Now, you look at their pitching right now, and it doesn't look very pretty, but it doesn't have to. The reason why it doesn't have to is because they have a lot of pitchers that are just waiting for that one last little bump to get up there. So to really kind of make them, I hate to say it, great again. It felt weird in the mouth, but I couldn't think of anything better. Um, Thomas, I think that's Zach Thomas, the young guy, is their best hitter by far. I think Santoyo, the guy that got off Cleveland a couple seasons ago, is their best pitcher. Best rookie hitters. They're a guy that down in their lineup that's going to come up, maybe start the year, play well, come up midseason. I think there is. I think his name is Alan Henderson. I think he's the guy that could potentially come up and play right away next year. If not, midseason jump might get up there. Now, people are probably going to say, well, what about Wes Fruman? Wes Fruman looks pretty. Looks like he's getting ready. He's still at least a year away, more than likely. I think Alan Henderson's the guy most likely to play, though it was a close second with Ryan Nyberg, who I think is a guy that could play defensively and provide a little bit of offense. But I'm not sure what Milwaukee ends up doing with him. Maybe just throwing him on a bench spot, kind of seeing how it plays out. Pitching side, your number one draft pick from the year 2082. So your number one draft pick from 2 seasons ago, Mr. Chesty Taylor, will be in the rotation to start the year. This is where Jermaine will come on and say, no, he won't. Silly. Well, be that as it may, I think he should be starting the year in the rotation, regardless of what anybody else says. I'm going to assume that the playoffs have started because nobody's chatting. Yep, good. All right, good. So I can do this without people really listening better. All right, so so I think Chester Taylor should be starting next year in the rotation. I think their outlook for Milwaukee's good. I think they're going to start progressing as a team. I think they have the cap space to add a little bit, potentially a lot, and so it'll be interesting to see how they do in that division, because that's another division I think is going to be pretty tight the next couple of years. But I think Milwaukee can make a push to try to get into that playoff spot in that division. Moving on to everybody's next favorite team that begins with an M, Minnesota, Minnesota's a guy that I think is going to comp a lot of players this offseason. I think that it is time for them to do. Again, I'm going to use the word retool because I think that's the word that Mass wants to use. Retool this year. I think they're going to comp up to 4 guys, honestly. I think you're going to see a lot of comps out of Minnesota. And yet, with all those comps, it's not going to really help their bottom line a lot. I think they'll still be right around 109 coming into the offseason, which leaves them about 40 million in cap space. Again, 40 million, not too much to sneeze at. So it'll be interesting to see if that is indeed what happens in Minnesota. But even with all those comps and kind of this retool that's happened, you're still going to have a team that's going to be relatively decent. Now, I don't want to say good. And the reason why I don't want to say good is because I think a lot of their comps are going to be, a lot of these guys they're going to get rid of on the offensive side of the ball. I think that either comping or trading is going to take a lot of these guys away. And it's going to leave their offense relatively kind of destitute. I mean, they've got an offense right now that's pretty solid. I think it's going to go from pretty solid to pretty, empty desert road kind of way pretty quick. We'll see. I could be wrong. Mass doesn't go the retool, but I think that's probably what's going to be best for him right now. So that the hitting, just kind of that third tier hitting is going to take a hit if indeed that's the case. They go pitching's good. I mean, obviously, you look at their pitching; they have 3 young, very talented pitchers. You look at Andrew Luckett and Lilburn. So I think with that, and then you had John Carrison, the closer. I mean, you got a good rotation. You got a decent bullpen. You got a decently good bullpen. I mean, I think it'll be very interesting to see how they play with the potential lessened lineup load going into next year. That being said, depending on what they do, depending on how things go, I think Engelreich is their best hitter. I think Andrew, obviously, is their best pitcher. Rookies to help them, I think they got a couple. I think they got Hahn, a gentleman that they picked up mid-season in a trade. I think he's going to be a guy that could potentially help them right at the start of next year, especially if some of those trades happen. I think he'll definitely be a starting rotation kind of guy, starting lineup kind of guy, and a guy that's right around that level of losing his rookie status. Probably did, and I might be miscalculating this, but regardless, Lilburn is, I'm going to put as his best rookie pitcher moving into next year. And again, this is a team I believe is declining. I believe they are going to retool and regress quite a bit, especially offensively this offseason. But I think that that's going to be a quick retool if they do it right, and they should be up and ready to go in a few seasons, which will be interesting because that will be right when Potentially Cleveland starts making their push, and Chicago should already be up there. So that'll become a very interesting division again, relatively quickly. With Detroit trying to remain dominant as a bunch of teams kind of go for the scraps, for lack of a better phrase. Montreal, I think Montreal's going to have a comp guy this year. Just one, but it'll be interesting to see. Montreal's a team that is probably in the playoffs right now, so good luck to Montreal. Hope all goes well for you, especially with your opening round wild card game. Montreal this offseason, putting their projected cap about 103, gives them about 47 million to play with. Hitting, that's a fourth tier. Montreal's one of those teams you look at them and you're just like, how do they keep doing what they keep doing? And they only ended up 2 games out of the East. And you look at it, you're a little bit confused, but they made some trades. They got Roscoe Berman in. He definitely helped. Andy Rowling, a very good hitter they have there in the middle. Joseph Woomwell, another good hitter. The ageless Carlos Segui played pretty damn well down the stretch. So things are actually looking pretty good in Minnesota. And they got a lot of young rookies. They're not too far off. Like they got one guy I think will start probably be up there to start the season, if not mid-season, and a couple guys not too far behind. They're going to really kind of keep that youth movement going in Montreal. I think their hitting prospects are pretty good. Pitching side, again, that's you look at their pitching. If you looked at just their pitching, you would wonder how they made the playoffs. I mean, nothing. There's nobody that screams ace. They've got a couple of good quality, solid pitchers in the rotation. Their bullpen, you look at their bullpen and the numbers are there. You wonder where it came from. You don't. Is it consistent? Is it going to keep going in the next year? That's going to be the big question. If it can, they're going to continue to be. Can't, they're going to take a big step back. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I mean, on the pitching side, they got a couple prospects too that I think are going to be useful, helpful soon. Best hitter right now, I think is Rollins their best hitter. I think Edmonds is their best pitcher. And again, I'm not high on many of the pitchers, but I think he's their best one. I think Giuliano could be their best hitter, their best rookie offensively next year. It'll be interesting to see what they do with him. As far as the pitching goes, I think Toldano will be their best rookie pitcher next year. If he cracks it, I think their outlook's good. I mean, honestly, I think they're going to continue to play right around the level they're playing at. If not, maybe increasing a little bit and kind of keeping that playoff streak is really what they're going for. So it'll be interesting to see there. The Mets. We're going to move on to the amazing Mets right now. Now, this is a team that always has money to spend. Don't know how it is. Mazel tov to their market. I don't think there's anybody they're going to comp. I think the payroll is going to be about $152 to start the offseason, which leaves them about 28 to spend. And if we've learned anything from the way that New York spends money in the offseason, they'll spend that and then some. They're hitting, even with that big offseason purchase of Mr. Elia, as well as some of the hitters they already had out there, hitting just mid-range at best. It is just not high around the league compared to some of the other lineups. It is very interesting. Now, you would think a lineup with Bo Winners and Ross and Smith and Elias and Busso and all these guys and the great Aaron Chester, you would think that they would be crushing it. I mean, Elias did hit 42 home runs. They had, Jesus, 4 of the guys with 20 plus. Like, you would think that they would have won more than 82 games last year, but they didn't. They won 82 games. They were 21 games back in the division. It is what it is. Now, how that happened? Again, that offense just isn't quite on par. I don't think it looks on par. It feels on par. It's just not. Something's not clicking there. There's some kind of internal thing that needs to be changed there. Again, I think part of that problem is going to be solved this offseason when they dropped their third baseman that played like crap in the field last year. And not the crap in the field that Priestley plays, but you can make up with the bad. We're talking about the late, great Justin Meade, who's 34 years old now. Was a big deal back in Cincinnati back in the late 70s. And it's kind of tailed off quite a bit since then with the bat, with the glove, with just about everything. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where the Mets go. But obviously they're going to spend. Pitching, got a solid top two. You got a solid top two in Pendergast, a guy that I wish I could have pried away years ago when I had a chance. Not that I necessarily had a chance, but if I had a chance, well, it would have been great to grab him. He's a guy that looks quite good and will be quite good for a while. Russell Weiss, another guy, not quite 30 yet. Good years. Good years. And again, I think he's a guy that, well, he could be a free agent. Sure. Will he? No. No, he'll be re-signed. There's no reason why not to. He threw a no-hitter back in, or no, he didn't. How? What the hell? Yeah, there it is. No-hitter. The last 2 years ago threw a no-hitter. So we'll see. They also picked up an interesting guy mid-season who pitched okay for them, and Dennis Rendo. I'm going to be interested to see how his career progresses. He's a guy that was highly touted as a trade target, and I want to be interested to see how he plays. I'm not a huge fan of his. I'm interested to see where he goes from here. Bullpen solid in New York, um, so we'll see. The Mets will be a team to watch out for. I think they're a guy come out there, spend a bunch of money, um, and just still not quite make it, but we'll see. Best hitter, obviously, Elia. Best pitcher, Weiss. Best rookie hitter, I think their best rookie hitter is going to be Allen. He's a guy that can come up, probably play right away for them to start of the season, if not definitely by midseason. Best pitcher, again, lack of better option maybe. Verity is going to be the guy that's come up and helped them the most. I think they have a good outlook. Again, don't think they're going to top some of those other teams in the division, but I think they have a good outlook going into next year. Now we get on to the Yankees. The Yankees, the team that has just money for nothing and chicks for free. Nobody's comped out of the Yankees. I think they've traded away enough of their cap space um, that they don't need to let anybody go in free agency. I don't think they will. Anybody major, that is. I think their cap space going to the offseason is going to be 169. That's the projected cap. I apologize. With their cap space is about 105. About $25, $26 million to spend this offseason. Will they? No, I don't think they will. I think that if anything, they'll buy a small piece here or there, maybe. Bench pieces at most. I think that what they'll do is enjoy the fact that they have a little bit of cap flexibility, a little bit of cap freedom, and they'll just run with that so that they don't continue to lose money hand over fist. Maybe bank up a little bit of cash so that when some of these young guys start making that corner, they're able to pay them or continue to pay them. Um, so I think that when you look at it, they have the best hitting lineup. I mean, I particularly have the best lineup. The lineup is phenomenal, even with trading the pieces they've traded. They brought the right pieces back in return for those guys. That they have the best lineup. They have one of the best rotations. They have good defense. I think top to bottom, New York's just one of those teams. Even though they didn't win as many games as maybe you would expect them to have done, they didn't even win 90. I think the top to bottom, ooh, they're good. They're just good. You got Sean Walker, got Sam Swade on the pitching side. You got Carter and Farby just ready to go, I believe. And that top to bottom hitting. I mean, just even with all those trades, trading away those big pieces they traded away, they're still super fucking scary. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how high they can reach next year. So best hitter, I think, is Coolman. I think the best pitcher obviously is Walker. I think Walker's one of the best pitchers, period. Um, Rookies. Now, there's a couple of rookies I think that come up and help them quite a bit next year. I think Jeff Lewis, the catcher, is a guy that can really help them out of the gate next year. And I think Carter, the pitcher, is going to help them in the rotation, probably in the third, fourth slot next year. So it'll be interesting to see with those two young guys what they can do. Outlook for New York, very good. I mean, they're up there with Arizona and Houston as teams that I think are just going to be hard to get past anytime soon. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that progresses uh, moving forward. So next team on the block is Oakland, another team in my division. Oakland. I think Oakland's going to comp one person. I'm not going to tell you who. You could choose that for yourself. Doug has proved to be a very shrewd GM. So I think he will comp somebody. That being said, his cap's projected to be about 142, given about 17 million to spend. So Doug's not the guy that will go after guys that he wants in free agency. Will those guys be there? I think they will. Will he go after them? We'll see. I'm not sure. I don't think he might not have the cap space to do it. They're a very interesting team, Oakland. Um, they're a team that I keep thinking is going to be better than they are, and I don't mean that as a slight by any stretch of the imagination. It's just interesting. I always think that they're going to be good, and then they just don't quite do it. So I don't know if they're in that fourth tier hitting wise. I mean, right average hitting, pitching's pretty solid. Nothing amazing, nothing that scares other teams. But I mean, they put in solid pitching performances. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses. They got a young guy there, uh, really technically a rookie still this year, the Pasternak, the closer. We'll see if he continues to progress. He continues to progress the way he's going. They're gonna have a very good young closer and probably a solid young bullpen. That's something Doug's been focusing on in draft. It's going to be interesting to see how Oakland goes for that. They're pitching kind of much better than league average right now. So it'll be interesting to see. Prospect wise, here's where some of the issues I start to have with Oakland. They've drafted very well, I've thought they've drafted. I've been very high on their drafts for many number of years, and I'm just not seeing it by the amount. Pitching side, I'm not seeing much. Hitting side, I'm seeing a couple bats down on the hitting side that aren't ready yet, but when they will ready, should be pretty good. I'm just not sure. It'll be interesting to see um, how some of those guys progress. I think Oakland is another one of those teams that's just middling. I think they're going to be right around 500 for a number of years now. Find something to do. It's just going to be where they're at for a little while. I think their best hitter right now is Clark. I think Sundberg's their best pitcher. They don't have a rookie pitcher that's going to help them out. I don't see anybody on that end. I think Vosser is going to be their best hitter from rookies next year. The guy's going to help them potentially the most. Again, probably out of the gate. Philly, everybody's team to either feel sorry for or bash, depending on how you're feeling on any given day. Philly's a team that Dave has actually done quite well to help turn around. Um, and nobody really wants to admit it. I think before even Dave got there, the little bit of time that Poldy spent there really went far. He had a really good draft the one year that he drafted. And I think that's really helped set Dave up with his good drafting to make a team in Philly that could be pretty good here soon. Cap space, shit, Philly's got it. I mean, I don't think they're going to comp anybody. They're only projected to have $48 million spent going in the offseason, which leaves them about $57 million to spend. So they'll have money to spend. Should they spend it? No, not really. They're not there yet. I mean, they're a team that I have the outlook proving team. They're still a couple years away. I mean, another one of those teams that, yeah, if there's a 27-year-old pitcher that hits the market, do you think I'm going to send him 5 years and then 3 years when I'm getting ready to play, like he'll still be their pitcher for me? Yeah, maybe you take a shot on him if he's not too expensive. If you don't got a Mets team or a New York team or somebody that's just or Houston who has a bajillion dollars to spend, just blowing money past you just because they can. You take a shot on some of those type guys if they're there in the free agent market this offseason and kind of to set up for those next couple of years when you start getting good. But hitting below league average, pitching well below. Their pitching is really what takes the cake for them. Is why they lost 107 games this year. I mean, I'm not gonna pile on, Dave. I'm really not trying to. But the pitcher was just horrendous, top to bottom, horrendous. Starters were pretty terrible. Bullpen was pretty terrible. Everything was just relatively terrible. I'm sorry, just bad. But good news is that's going to change in the very near future. Pitching is going to be a strong suit in Philly moving forward. A lot of young pitchers ready to play or just about ready to play in the majors. It's going to be a big turnaround for Philly there. And a couple guys who's a little bit further off that also look very good. You look at guys like Todd Sharma and Tom Fox, who's the number one pick overall last year. These are guys that are still a bit of a ways away. Frank Westlake, I think, got drafted, I think, third round a couple years ago. Couple years away, but if they continue to progress the way they're progressing, should be good enough to really turn things around for Philly. Hitting side, again, hitting side is the one little bright spot that a couple of hitters that hit pretty well this year. Nothing great, nothing to write home about. You got a couple of guys that might not be as good as you hope. It'll be interesting to see what Jeff Thompson does in his second year. I mean, he had a kind of year. You would expect him to do better. Interesting to see what he does. Best hitter right now, I think best hitter is obvious. I think it's Nagasawa is by far their best hitter. I think a heck of a better option and a guy that I'm pretty sure they're going to resign. Stillwell, probably their best pitcher. And I think when you have a guy that was sold for cash because nobody wanted him, that's a lot to say that he's their best pitcher, but I think he is. He pitched pretty well in Philly down the stretch, as Dave will tell you if you ask, and even if you don't. Hitters and pitchers, rookies. I think you look at the M's. I think Merritt is going to be their best chance rookie hitter. A guy that could come out of the gate and play for them. And I think McLaughlin is going to be their best pitcher. coming out of the gate. And you guys all keep PCing me. I'm not going to look at those until. I think he's going to be the best rookie pitcher. And I know a lot of people are probably going to think about Eli, something with a V. I say as I quickly try to click over there. Eli's coming. Verdisi. I don't think he's quite ready. I think maybe mid-season he might be. But I think a guy like McLaughlin could probably start right away and provide some quality innings and not be too terrible. So I think that is the way that Philly's going to go. Pitt, the team that everybody's talking about with their big bets. So for those who don't know, starting next season, Pitt has a bet with three different teams to win 2 World Series in the next 10 years. So not this year. If he wins it this year, it does not count. So I almost hope that he does win it tonight. Just because. But over the next 10 years, he has 3 different bets with 3 teams that he'll win 2 in the next 10 years, not including tonight, starting 85, season 85, the next 10 seasons, with starting next year. So it'll be interesting to see. Now, what's going for Pitt? What's going good for Pitt? Well, as it stands right now, they have one of the better offense very often. And they're all young, all really young guys. What else is going on with them? They just built a new stadium. They just built a new stadium a couple years ago. It's open. They're still painted off, or maybe they have painted off. Gilly would be able to tell you that with potential glee in his voice. Projected cap, 47. That's paltry. They're only going to spend on 47, which leaves them about 49. Again, double their cap to spend. So they're going to have money to spend this offseason. And I expect them to be very, very active in the free agent market. Again, I think they have tier 3 hitting. I think their pitching is right below league average. The pitching is not 100% great or good or okay. It's kind of eh. I mean, you got a guy at the top of the lineup, Larry Fay, who I think is just, he's a guy that everybody was really excited about, and he's just not really living up to that expectation, which is unfortunate. Couple other interesting guys in that rotation, but not a lot. I think the rotations are going to need a lot. They got some guys coming up. That should be solid to good pitchers. Some of the ones that you're really looking forward to, the Guard Hudgens, the Ricardo Santiano, maybe. They're a ways off. So they're still a couple years off, which is why he's willing to make that 10-year bet, because he's really banking on them coming up. Pitching's going to be the weak side of him, all right? It doesn't – the rotation was okay. Bullpen was relatively good this season. Going into the next season, you're expecting about more of the same. Rotation's going to be the part where he's going to really need to spend this offseason. Again, I think there's going to be a number of good comped pitchers out there. McGill can get 2 of them, and he's going to really make some noise. And some of us might start regretting that bet that we made. But we shall see. That is for another day. Hitting-wise, again, he's going to have one of those lineups that very well might mirror what Chicago has now or what Arizona's been having. You've got a lot of young hitters there. McCourty, Stewart, Fretwell, even young Louis Jones, all good hitters. And he's got guys come up right behind them. Brian Ions, Frank Elliott's not too far off. I mean, you're looking at a team that's got the hitters. And he's going to have one of those big time lineups. Will the pitching get up there? I don't know. You look at the prospects again. He's a lot of good hitting prospects, not a lot of good pitching prospects that are ready to go. Some of them are further down the road. It'll be interesting if he spends his money right in free agency, which I'm assuming he will. It's a team to watch out for. This is a team that I'd be a little bit scared of. Best hitter right now, well, I think is going to be best hitter now. That might not continue, and I can see an argument for the hitters. Fretwell right now is his best hitter. And again, for lack of a better option, I'm going Fay as his best pitcher. Best rookie next year, Ions. I think Ions is going to come up and just and do quite well for him next year. But maybe not. But I think he will. Best pitcher, I think Barclaw was a sneaky steal off a certain GM. I think he'll be the best pitcher for them next year. Again, not their best pitcher overall. I think there's probably better pitchers in their minors. I think next year he's a big guy you can put in the 4th, 5th spot, get some good innings and some good ball out of. I think he'll be interesting to watch. Their outlook at Pitt's good. Not very good, but good. I think he's a good outlook at Pitt. San Diego. San Diego has, again, nobody. I think they're going to. I don't think they'll comp an absolute soul going into this offseason, but we'll see. Percy's a little bit newer, so I'm not quite sure on exactly all of his habits yet. He hasn't really developed them or pick up. It'll be interesting to see, but I project his cap to be about $99 million. So $99 million, leaving him about $56 to spend. So he'll have money to spend. Will he? I don't know. I think he'll be cautious about spending some of his money, but he'll have it to spend. I mean, he'll have a very nice little chunk of money to spend if he chooses so to kind of add to that thing. And look at the lineup at the fourth tier hitting lineup. He's got a couple of hitters that are absolutely feared. Um, and Alberto Resendez, I think Simon Wickman is a guy who stole 52 bases this year. I mean, you're looking at a guy that's still young, unpeaked, got to get better. James Bird, Nick Jones, he's got some good hitters. Does he have more than minors? He does. He has Tom Welker, a young outfielder, getting close to being ready, and a couple guys. Oh God, excuse me. Past that, that are a year or two off, that should help him moving forward. 8. How keeps messaging me? All right, Mike, I'll get to you in a minute. You guys aren't even listening to me right now. You just messaged me out of. You already paid your stadium. Okay, so Gilly's stadium is paid off. So that's fantastic for him, which means whatever money he has either left in the bank or left in the game, he's able to definitely wheel and deal and spend. So that is very good news for Gilly moving forward, and not so good news maybe for some other members of that division. But again, we shall see. San Diego again hitting, not bad. Pitching, not bad. Defense, better than average. You're looking good. So you're looking in the minors. In San Diego again, hitting wise, you got a couple guys, but nothing that screams great. Pitching wise, again, there's one or two pitchers they have that could turn out very good. And they have a lot to choose from down there, so it'll be interesting to see because they already have a pretty solid rotation. Didn't pitch great this year. Obviously, they lost 85 games. They were under 500. I think as much of that has to do with maybe their bullpen, which was kind of blasé at best. But their rotation was pretty solid. They got some guys coming up pretty soon that should play well for them in the rotation. So we'll see how they go move forward. Best hitter, obviously, I think is Resendez. Best pitcher, I think, is Tinker. Best rookie hitter, I think Welker's going to come up and play well for them next year. I think he might get a shot out of the gate to play. If not, he should be up by midseason. Should play very well for them. Best rookie pitcher, I'm going to go say Palin. I think is going to be his best rookie pitcher. He's a guy that probably should start the year in the rotation. Maybe not another message. Who the hell? God damn it, Mike. No, I'm not even going to look at them. I just keep seeing them pour in. Palin is a guy that I think will start next year. And if not start the year, no, there's no way he does. If he doesn't start the year, that's wrong. He needs to start next year in the rotation. I think outlook in San Diego is good, but cautiously good. Again, they're in a division that is very interesting. It's a very stacked division. They have the ability to continue to play at the top of that division, even though they didn't do it this year. They're 29 games out of first. That's just the Arizona factor. They're a team that I think if they wanted to, could retool, could rebuild. I mean, Resendez is 32, Bird's 31. I mean, they don't have to. They could definitely keep going for it. But at the same time, if they wanted to, they could get just a boatload for some of those players and turn it around pretty quick and maybe let Arizona peter out a little bit. If Arizona is going to peter out a little bit, I'm not saying that they will. All right, moving on, but staying in the division. San Francisco, team that finished last in the division. Why did they finish last? Well, they're rebuilding. Jason and Hick have them rebuilding down there. I still think that they somebody going into this offseason, probably not a bad idea for a team that who's rebuilding but has a $113 projected cap. Why is that? Well, when you're rebuilding and you have a massive cap space available to you, you're able to take on shitty contracts from teams that don't want those contracts anymore, aka Brad Smith. And you get picks from those things and then try to turn those picks into good players. Some drafts that works, some drafts that are not good drafts, and it's not a good idea. It is what it is. Hitting wise, they actually aren't that bad. For a team that really only won 70 games, their hitting's not bad. They got a bunch of young players in that kind of lineup that are hitting okay. Not great, not bad. We'll see. Again, at San Francisco, their hitting is about that league average. Not bad. We'll see what happens to them. Pitching, defense is a little bit lackluster, if I'm remembering correctly, on them. Like their third baseman, just poor. Some of their outfielders didn't play too well either. All in all, it's interesting to see. Question if it makes what the hell happened in San Francisco? See a guy. Okay, maybe nothing. All right, pitching wise, let's look at their pitching. Decent pitchers, nothing great, nothing right homebound. Rivera, Hobbs, Nagel, These are guys that fit in the fourth, fifth starter in most big teams. But in a team like San Francisco, they're good to put up those 4 ERAs and just kind of plug along and keep them above 50 wins. And the minors, they have some people getting ready coming up. On the hitting side, sure. They have a couple hitters that should see some time soon. One that is it'd be an interesting guy to watch, and Wesley Wold. He's a guy that has more power than you've seen probably in a lot of other places. But does he have the ability to hit for contact? Not looking good. It's not looking good for him, but we'll see. They have a couple of the guys down there that look pretty solid. Paul Adams, everybody's favorite number one pick, at least one of my favorite number one picks in the last couple of years. Mark Mate. Um, so we'll see. Things aren't looking horrible in San Francisco. If anything, I think they're middling. I think they'll continue around this pace for a while until some of these guys really start to get ready. And there's just a couple things too they need to draft a little bit better and hope for a little bit better jumps in. So maybe not drafting better, but hoping for better results. I think their pitching prospects are not that great, while their hitting prospects are slightly better. I think the best hitter right now is Martinez. I think the best pitcher is that Thomas Rivera. Rookie hitter, I think Mate is just about ready to come up and show the world what he can do. So it'll be interesting to see if they do call him up, give him the shot early next year, or if they try to play that Super 2 game and keep him down for another year or two, just to really extend their window once they do get into it. And Thompson, I think, is the pitcher that has the best chance of coming up and helping them next year. So Thompson is Ron Thompson. Again, not very pretty, but he's a guy you can throw in the back end of the rotation. Going to win you a couple games. Not anything not anything fantastic. Not a top prospect by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that that's where that will lie for them. So again, another middling team. On to everybody's favorite team to bash, the Seattle Mariners. For some reason, my personal favorite, though I don't know why. And they're an interesting team moving into the offseason. They're looking to project their cap at about $71 million, which leaves them about $52 million to cap spend. So they have 52 to spend. Will they spend it? Again, I think they're one of those teams that if the right player is out there, they will go out and spend some money on them if it's going to help their squad moving forward. Again, next year, probably not their year to win. Probably a team in general, 9+. Oh my God, who the fuck's messaging me? It's Mike still. Jesus, Mike. I can provide a written comment. Okay. Well, I see that you're writing comments, Mike, but I'm not going to get to them till I'm done. I'm not going to open any of my individual PCs at the moment. So anyway, Seattle is going to have $52 million to spend. Will they spend some of it? Yes, they surely will. On what? We'll see. Could be bench pieces. Could be young players if there are any available. Could be a pitcher. Could be a hitter. I don't know. I honestly don't know which direction they're going to go. I don't think they know which direction they're going to go. Hitting wise, congratulations, Seattle. You ranked as the worst lineup out of everybody outside of. Oh, fuck. Nope. Out of everybody. So, Seattle ranked as the worst possible lineup in the majors this past season. Probably because they're stupid, but we're not going to get into that because Gilly already pointed out self-loathing is not the way to go. But they have a couple of hitters that are interesting. I mean, there's a couple guys in the majors right now. Helmer played very well coming over from Washington. Jim Smith's another guy that kind of a conundrum. See where he's going to go. And then you got a guy like J.P. Carew, who played pretty well, mostly against lefties, since coming over from Cleveland. But all in all, I think their lineup stay pretty much the same. It's going to be kind of this very blah lineup. I mean, there's just not much there. It is what it is. On the pitching side, however, pitching side's a little bit different. The pitching side is interesting in Seattle. They've got Keith Gantz, who's one of the best lefties in the game, had a 2.36 ERA this past season, won 14 games. So it'd be very interesting to see if he continues to pitch well in Seattle. For some reason, lefties tend to pitch very well in Seattle. Tom Little being the most recent example of that, a guy that pitched phenomenal in Seattle and kind of shit terrible everywhere else. So we'll see. But there's a lot of young pitching. So we're talking about the rookie side now. Talk about the youth side of teams. Seattle ranks, and again, I'm well aware that I am the GM of Seattle, so take this with a grain of salt, but according to the calculations, Seattle ranks best for hitting prospects, probably because they have so many of them. So not because they're the best, but just because they have so many of them. But there are a lot of hitters that more than likely will see time in the majors next year, depending on their jumps. You're looking at guys like Arnetto, McAllister, Theos, Smart, McBride, etc. A lot of guys that are either going to start next year. There's a couple of those guys probably going to start next year in the majors. A couple of guys that jump in when they do jump, if they jump. Again, will be in the majors. So Seattle's got a big youth movement again. They fucked up their last youth movement. Hopefully they won't do the same thing again. I think the plan in Seattle is to not fuck it up again, but we'll see how it goes. Right now, again, a lot of young hitters, a lot of young pitchers too. And again, pitchers that most other teams aren't too high on, outside of maybe Mike Hudgens. But a lot of good young pitchers over there too. So we'll see how that rotation, how that lineup kind of plays out over the next couple of years. I think the outlook in Seattle is good, just based on the massive amount of prospects they have. Again, if none of them turn out, then it's going to turn piss poor real quick. We'll see what happens. I think the best hitter at the moment is Jim Smith. I think the best pitcher by far, obviously, is Keith Gantz. Best rookie hitter. I think the best rookie hitter guy's going to come up probably and start next year for them. We'll see how he plays out. Is Arnado. Best rookie pitcher, Dejos. I think Dejos, a guy that overlooked, taken in the second round a couple of years ago, got a couple of nice jumps. Looks to start the year next year in the rotation. So we'll see how he plays. I think the outlook in Seattle is good. Not quite maybe as good as somebody like Chicago, who has all those players already. They're playing now. They're looking good. But projecting, they're maybe middling next year, but I think overall is relatively good. Unlike the next team that we're going to talk about, another GM that kind of plays from afar, which is not as fine. I'm not going to bash anybody's GMing style, but we're looking at St. Louis, who has a projected cap coming out into the free agency is $52 million. $52 million is the projected cap. Their projected cap space, availability of money to spend, 14. So somehow their cap max is about $66 million. And I'm going to like quadruple check that because that just seems heinous in some way, but yet there the fuck it is. So yeah, somehow low 60s for cap. Now they have a lot of cash. They have over $90 million in cash. So I don't know what's going on there. I honestly don't know if they have a new stadium, they need a new stadium, or they've just not played well enough that their fans refuse to go to the game. I don't know. I probably should have looked. I didn't. My bad. But hitting wise, league average. They have about a league average lineup. Lineup is good enough to win them 64 games. Couple of young guys coming up to play. Again, the lineup doesn't look bad. Not bad, not great, but not bad. So we'll see how that lineup progresses. Again, not much there. Everything that's worth playing is already up in the majors. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in St. Louis on the hitting side. The pitching side is terrible. I believe they were Seattle was really the worst hitters. I believe pitching side, St. Louis was tied for the worst on the pitching side. It's just kind of terrible. And again, Brian Wallace pitched pretty well this year. I mean, mid 3 ERA, not bad. Like he pitched pretty solid. But top to bottom, just terrible rotation, terrible bullpen. So you looked under the minors. Is there help in the future? Sure. There is a young gentleman named Matt Clear, who is almost ready to make the majors. You got Paul Youngs, looks like he could be, but isn't. A couple years away. Same with Carpasso, a couple years away. Rich Whitson, another young guy who was drafted this past year. Again, 17. He's a ways away. So pitching side looks a little bit okay for St. Louis, but it's far away. Nothing's just quite there, quite ready to go. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens. Hayes is their best hitter right now. Waltz, for lack of a better one, is their best pitcher. Rookie players, I think Smith, first baseman on the hitting side, looking quite good. Should be up there smacking some balls around for them next year, kind of maybe buying them a couple wins. I think Onslow is going to be the best rookie pitcher they're going to see next year. Now, Onslow's a guy probably nobody's ever heard of. Everybody's going to look up. His first name is Torrance. I think that's all you really need to know from them. But he's a relief pitcher. And he's a relief pitcher that I've mentioned in the air. If people are paying attention, they're going to be bothering GD to try to get him from him. Because he looks like a guy that could be quite a good relief pitcher. But I think if GD does right, puts him out there in the closer role next year, and becomes by far their best rookie pitcher, maybe their best pitcher, period. Middling. St. Louis is very middling. I don't know what's going on there. They have a lot of money, not a lot of cap space. Something needs to happen. They need to jumpstart that program. But again, in that division is looking very competitive with a couple good teams right at the top and a couple teams pushing to get up to the top or further. They don't really have anywhere to go. It's going to be interesting to see what St. Louis does or doesn't do moving into next year. All right, going back to my division for the last time to look at the Texas Rangers. a team that lost 106 games in a very heavy rebuild at the moment. You look at a team that has, again, one of the, I had Seattle had the worst lineup. Texas, I believe, was a distant second, but nevertheless a second. Distant as in they were far better than mine enough, but still second worst lineup was in Texas this year. Um, and rotation, second worst rotation as well. So you can see why Texas won as many games as they won. Their rotation is unfortunately quite poor. And I don't want to say purposely so because they obviously weren't tanking, but they are rebuilding. So their lineup, their rotation, their bullpen, terrible. Their lineup, again, not much better. They did pick up some good players in trade midseason to make sure that they got above 50, which they did do. Now, again, they weren't far above 50, winning only 56 games, but 50 is the limit. They got above it. Mazel tov for them. They picked up Grass and McSorley. Unfortunately, Grass got injured right when he got there and didn't play much. However, the intent was there for them to do it. So going to the offseason, what's their cap look? 75. They're going to hold about 75 million. Their max cap, 81. So six million to spend with. That's fine. They're not going to spend anything. They're really not. They're going to keep what they have and just continue to play with it. They have enough young guys that aren't great. That they're not going to hurt. They're just going to run out there. They might sign a couple 2-year, $1 million guys. And that's all they really need. They're not looking to come out of the rebuild yet. I mean, they are still a ways off. I mean, honestly, their outlook is improving just because the guys that drafting Texas always drafts very well. So things will improve there. But right now, what's the point? I mean, like I said, hitting is one of the worst, pitching is one of the worst, defense was okay. But when you flip over then and look at the prospects, again, they rank very high. They're the second highest hitting prospects. They ranked as second highest in pitching prospects too. So they're farm is quite healthy. You got guys like Sotelo, Clements, Skalk, Williams on the hitting side. Aaron Shields potentially. These are guys that they've been waiting on to come up and should in the next couple of years start to make some noise and kind of come forward. Pitching side, same thing. There's got a couple pitchers down there in the minors that are a little bit farther off. Homer Jones, Kelly Cole. But these are guys that they're expecting a lot from once they do arrive. When will that be? It's going to be a ways off. It's not going to be anytime soon, unfortunately, for Texas, or fortunately, depending on which way you look at it. They're going to continue to be one of those teams in the top 5 picking for the next few years until they get ready. Best hitter, Grass is by far the best hitter, even though he barely played for them due to his injury. Cure is their best pitcher. Again, not great, but for them, fantastic. Rookies. I think Burwitz, a guy they picked up off Minnesota a few seasons ago, is going to be able to start for them next year, probably in the outfield. Not going to be an all-star by any stretch of the imagination, but should help them continue to try to strive to be above that 50-win mark. And Velaquiz is going to be the pitcher, I think, next year. The rookie pitcher that's going to help them the most. Again, him, young 23-year-old lefty. He is going to age, I believe, over the offseason to 24. Again, he's a guy that's not great, but you know what? Fuck it. You throw him in the 5th spot of the rotation. He gets you 5 to 10 wins. That might be an overstretch. He might get you 5 wins, but that's what you need. Not a big deal. You're rebuilding. It is what it is. Toronto, our last look in the AL. Toronto Blue Jays. They are a team that won 82 games this year. So for all the crap that Corey and Mike got early in the season for some of the trades made, you know what? Toronto won 82 fucking games with those trades. So, I think Corey might know what he's doing out there. I think it's not as bad as you think. Speaking of know what you're doing, you're looking at a guy that's going to go into the offseason with $50 million in cap, meaning that with their max cap of 150, they're going to have as much money, if not a little bit more, than Houston does to spend. Will they? I don't know. It depends on who Mike comps. Sorry, that was a cheap shot, but it was so worth taking. But they'll have $100 million to spend this offseason. So where are they going to spend it? Pitching. Their pitching is absolute trash. I mean, hitting wise, they've got a couple good hitters. I mean, not great, but good. A couple of them are aging. Russell, Sabrina. I mean, they are Sabrina. Sanbria. I should stop watching Netflix. Not doing it now, but I was earlier. Sanbria. Again, these guys that are aging, probably not going to last much longer. They got young guys like Ford, who's kind of mastered out. I don't think so. Seattle, obviously, I missed it. Didn't have any comps. Nobody else. None of the other teams. Or I don't think are going to comp anybody. Wrong. I just don't see it. So none of the ones I mentioned since San Francisco going to comp anybody. 'cause I don't think I mentioned that, so don't worry about it. Toronto, same thing. Hitting, below league average. Pitching, it was the worst with St. Louis. I mean, their pitching was absolutely terrible. Um, but are things improving? They did win 82 games. I mean, games up there. And how did they do it with poor hitting and poor pitching? Luck, determination, I don't know. But Toronto's one of those interesting teams too, because when you look at their minors, the cupboards are kind of bare. The couples are kind of bare. Like obviously, on the offensive side, you're looking at one or two excited about. Um, but again, just a little bit excited about. Not nothing they're going to be, super happy to have and will not trade no matter what. So hitting is not going to get much better. But with all that cash to spend, they can field a decent team. Will they? We'll see. I mean, we'll see. It'll be real interesting to see. Pitching wise, again, Rich Haven, young pitcher, looks pretty darn good. Um, Obviously, should be the rotation to start next year at 20. Will he be 21 at the start of the season? He will be 21 at the start of the season. So interesting to see there. And a couple other pitchers they have over there. Ben Russo, another young pitcher they picked up, drafted. Pancho Abagonia, another young pitcher. Like they have some young pitchers over there that you like. It'll be interesting to see them develop. It's gonna be a little while for Toronto yet. Even at 82 wins, I have them, I believe, in the middling section. Um, I do. I have them as middling, which means they'll be somewhere in that 75 to 85 kind of win category. I know with that money to spend, I think that's easily doable for them. I think the best hitter right now is McCromley. I think the best pitcher remains Devlin. I think Horner is their best rookie hitter. That's going to come up and potentially help them the most next year. I want to call him Jack Horner, but I don't think that's right. It's not. It's Eric Horner. You'll look at him and you'll say, Mike, you are crazy. He's a 75, 76 catcher. How the fuck is he going to help him? Well, he's got an arm. He's got handling. He should play. Um, I know he has a better hitter up there, Carlo Mendez, and that's fine. I think Carlo Mendez is a great hitter, but I think not a great catcher. So I think that switch is going to help them. Yeah, he's not going to hit well, but he's going to defend well, and that's where his value is really going to come from. On the pitching side, it's Haven. Rich Haven's ready. Bring him up. Let him play. See what happens. He's 20, be 21 years old. Just let his freak flag fly. Let's see what happens. All right, and as far as the individual teams, last but not least, the Washington Nationals, Pete's favorite team. I don't know why, but for some reason he really kind of likes them. What's their offseason look like? Well, again, I don't think they're going to comp anybody, but it's Pete. Who knows what happens? Cap 134. I think they have 134 going into the offseason, which leaves them about 53 to spend. So a lot of teams going to have about 53 million, 50 or more million to spend this offseason. Will Pete do it? Sure will. He's one of those guys that'll go out. There's a guy he wants, so fucking get him. Hitting wise, again, top tier. Like he's in that top tier with the Arizonas, with the Atlantas for that lineup. He's got a very strong, very kind of scary lineup, but not a lineup that you. Nobody individually stands out as top dog per se, but you got a lot of guys that are just going to get it done, and a lot of young guys not too far behind that are also expected to probably get it done. So it'll be interesting to see. Pitching, again, pitching above average. As far as the league goes, you got Joey Walsh at the top, Avianos after him, and then a couple Waltones and Waltons down at the bottom. Nobody that screams wow, but got Dunwoody as well, who's end of the year on the DL. But you got a couple guys that are pretty good, and you got a couple guys on the rookie side that are also not too far off. Washington's right around the middle. Actually, they're about exactly league average as far as their minors go. So on the hitting side, again, they got a couple guys. You look at like a Brian Monte down there in the bottom. A Mark Mattis maybe. A Wesley Daniel. Guy with two first names. It's always a good sign. These are the kind of guys that you'll be interested to see kind of how they progress. Again, some of these they're younger, a little bit farther off. We'll see. I see the Jamie Sperry, another scary guy they have in the lineup. Again, this is why their lineup is what it is and why it's so scary. Pitching side, again, you got a Justin McLaren, a guy that's a few years off, but still looks like he's going to be pretty good. And you got a nice little Wiley Armalis. He's a guy too that looks to be much closer. to actually making some progress. Again, will he remain as a starter? Will Pete change into a closer slash reliever? Who knows? Let's see. Best hitter, Menzies. Menzies is their best hitter. A lot of good hitters. I think Menzies is the best one there. Walsh, by far, their best pitcher. As far as best rookie hitter moving into next year, I think Reagan is going to be that guy, or Regan, depending on which way you want to enunciate it. Regan probably being the appropriate one. He's the guy that had a little bit of time this year up in the majors, played about 40 at bats, 39 over 12 games. Um, hit okay, but I think again moving into next year, if Pete does continue to play with him up there, regardless of where that is, I'm guessing probably left field, maybe center, who knows. God, he's a guy that's going to hit, got a good eye, got a good contact, should play pretty well moving forward. And the Armillis, the guy I already mentioned, excuse me, Willie Armillis or Amaryllis. Wow. Yeah, all right. Amaryllis. I think he's a guy, again, throw him in your bullpen, maybe throw him back in your rotation, see what he can do. Not the best pitcher in the minors, but he's the guy I think is most likely to help this year. Pete, look good. And he thinks he should rebuild. I don't think he's there yet. I think Pete has the cap space, the wily attitude, and just the right amount of prospects and players in the system to be good. Again, I'm not going to put him in the very good category. I'm not going to put him in the Arizona, Atlanta kind of category, which I know is going to piss him off. Not intentional, honestly. I just think that he's in the good category, which is not quite the very good category. And no further comments, which means we must be deep in the playoffs. That's great. All right, so that's kind of the outlook for every team as I see it. Now, one other thing that I promised to do, to the groaning of everybody, is outlook for next year. So, what's going to happen next year in each division? What's going to happen in the playoffs, et cetera, as the playoffs for this year are probably still continually going on. I'm going to take my shot at next year. So, here is how I see things potentially playing out next year. Now, some of these are going to be a surprise to you, and this is probably where I'm going to get the most backlash for the pod, but that's fine. Let's go with it. So, AL East, drum roll, please. Here is how I see the AL East finishing out next year. It's going to be kind of similar to how it finished out this year, to be honest. I'm going New York, Montreal, Baltimore, Toronto, Boston. That is the finishing order as I see it in the AL East. In the AL Central, this is where it's going to get a little surprising. I see Detroit, Chicago, Minnesota, KC, Cleveland. That's right. I see Chicago as the second best team in the Central next year. In the West, I see the West ending about the same way as this year. Houston, Seattle, LA, Oakland, Texas. I mean, that's probably the safest one I've picked yet, but that's the way I kind of see the AL West moving on. Now, as far as the AL goes through the playoff teams, well, I think the division winners are obviously we already know them. Sorry, New York, Detroit, and Houston. Wild card, I think Montreal and Chicago. I think Montreal and Chicago are the wild card winners. Well, not winners, but wild card participants next year. So I think that's the way it's going to go in the AL. Now, as far as the playoffs goes, I think Montreal will beat Chicago in the wild card. I think they'll then lose to the Yankees in the divisional game. I think Houston will beat Detroit, and then I think Yankees will beat Houston. So I think the Yankees will go on to play in the World Series next year. Again, they might be in the World Series right now. I don't know. I'm not following that chat, but I think next year it'll be New York over Houston in the championship for New York going to the World Series. Then that is the 2085 season. Now, NL. Who do I see in the NL? East. Again, this is where Pete gets mad at me. I see Atlanta, Florida, Washington, the Mets, Philly. Again, I'm projecting Florida to do well again next year. I could see where they might not, but I'm going to continue to beat that drum until I'm right because fuck it. So, but I do. I think Florida finally makes that jump next year and gets into that second place in the NL East. Central. I see Central finishing very similar to what it did this year. And again, this is tough, but I think it's going to be Cincinnati, Pitt, Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Louis. I think Milwaukee is the one team there that could make a change. Like they could jump past Chicago, but it's just currently that's the way that I see it kind of evening out there in the Central. And I think that's going to be one of the more competitive divisions next year. That and the NL East. I think those are the two ones going to be the most competitive, with the AL Central being interesting. Not necessarily competitive, but interesting. The West. I think the NL West is going to go Arizona, San Diego, LA, Colorado, San Francisco. Again, I don't think much of a big surprise. I think that's the way it's going to finish out next year. Playoffs. So again, Atlanta, Cincinnati, Arizona is the division winners. The wild card teams, I think, are going to be Florida and Pitt next year. I think Florida is going to beat Pitt in the wild card game next year, and to go on to play Cincinnati. They will lose to Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati is probably going to be still a little too experienced to let that wily Florida team pass them. I think Arizona will take care of Atlanta, and then Arizona will take care of Cincinnati, and then they'll move on to play the World Series against the Yankees, who are already projected to be the team there. And I believe the Yankees will be triumphant over Arizona. I think the difference maker there is the pitching from New York. I think it remains the same, remains very good. So I project New York to beat Arizona in the World Series of 2085. Now, just because I like the abuse and I'm crazy as a loon, awards. What will the awards be in 2085? I'm going to go with the P's for MVPs. I think Perkins wins the AL MVP. And I think Priestley wins the NL MVP. Priestley, with Nation and Lucy and all those other guys there, is just going to have so many pitches thrown to him that he's not going to be able to hit all of them. I think those are going to be your MVP winners next year, Perkins and Priestley. Cy Young, Walker. I think Walker wins the Cy Young next year. And I think Botts from Cincinnati. I think he sneaks in and wins the Cy Young on the NL side. Now, Rookie of the Year. No fucking clue. Honestly, this is the toughest one to do because who is going to start who, I don't know. A lot of good players to choose from. Not sure who they're going to be, who's going to start, who's not going to start. So it is a total crapshoot. However, I think it is very likely that Lewis, the catcher, starts in New York. And I think if he does that, there's a good chance that he home runs his way to a Rookie of the Year next year. I think he'll put up a bunch of home runs. I think he'll play well defensively. I think that will give him the edge on that side. Now, there's a number of pitchers that are also going to probably start as rookies next year that I think have a very good shot as well. Gentleman in Houston, potentially the guy out of Seattle. I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see. But I'm going to go on a limb, say Lewis the catcher could be the Rookie of the Year out of New York next year for the AL. For the NL, I am going to go with Key. I think Seth Key is a phenomenal, very young pitcher. I think Florida has already shown that they want him to start. They already started him a few times this year. I think they're going to continue to start him next year. And if they do, due to his inning limit not being reached, he's a very good chance of pitching on a winning team and winning the Rookie of the Year. Again, long shots on both of them. And again, somebody's going to say, aren't those both your old prospects? Sure, but so is half the people in this file because I can't fucking not trade my prospects. So we'll see what happens. Maybe I'm just a little bit biased because I like both those players. Sure. And that of all the awards is definitely a crapshoot, but that's the way I'm going with it. So that is the pod for this evening. Hopefully Jermaine is still around and he can end this pod for us and then send me the link and I'll try to post it up later and I'll get through these 13 PCs that I've got since the start of this thing. So Jermaine is going to end this, and that is it for me. Thank you all for listening.